Very pleased to be talking today with Klaus Kohlmayr, Chief Evangelist and Development Officer with IDeaS Revenue Solutions, and IDeaS being the Platinum Plus sponsor at the Leadership from Chaos Conference, October the 12th in London, Rimini and Stockholm. So welcome, Klaus. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ally. It's always great to have a chat with you, and thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So you and I were discussing the other day when we were getting ready for this call, some of the key things that are coming through regarding how hotels are responding to consumers. And I thought to start with, we could look at customer expectations. So we know that consumer expectations are changing and that experience is king. And this is the real message coming out from the consumers that are staying in hotels at the moment. So guests are looking for online convenience, coupled with a streamlined offline experience, and these can often need to be managed simultaneously, so messaging, communicating, booking, etc. So what are the key changes in customer expectations that you've noticed for the hotel industry to date?
Well, I think the one key change just in general is how consumers interact with technology over the last 18 months. I think what we've all experienced is that we've all become digital first users. We're ordering online, and be it for groceries or for online delivery or for our food that's being delivered to our homes, all through phones and desktops. And that also relates to the experience that consumers have with the hotels that they want to stay in, or the experiences that they're trying to book. Everything is expected to be booked and experienced with minimal human touch. Or let's say that the right balance between human touch and technology, but it's more of a technology first environment now, where I expect to be able to check in, not just book and shop, but also check in, check out and order services through my phone. And that's been a huge shift. Some people say we've seen 10 years of acceleration in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. But the interesting factor is that consumers have significantly changed in the way they're using technology, and they expect technology to be part of their customer journey. And in the latest research that's come out, hotel company technology executives are feeling that COVID has accelerated the implementation and the distribution of technology in general.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion around that acceleration piece. So sort of bringing that into the revenue management arena, what new data points do you think you might have to be looking at to support the delivery of this much more accelerated data environment, and what role would technology be playing in this in the future, sort of into the revenue management role?
Yeah, I think there's a couple key shifts, right? With people expecting to interact through digital means. That allows hotel companies or any company to collect way more data than we've been able to collect in the past, right? So the whole trend toward the acceleration of digitization and the data that's being collected through that allows us to generate a much more personalized journey if the data is being used in the right way. And there's some research out there that 81% of customers are willing to pay more if they can choose the products and services that are more relevant to them. Or switched loyalty for a more personalized experience. And that's from some research that Skifted about 18 months ago. As we go through this digitization and this higher degree of personalization through better data that we're collecting, we can also then merchandise way more things than we have in the past. And some other research that Oracle did together with Skift has 67% of respondents and guests saying that they're very interested in purchasing non-room products and services from hotels. So we're moving very quickly from a room revenue focused environment to a total revenue focused environment, and then a total profitability environment, which the technology is all catching up very, very quickly. So it's very, very exciting, because we're collecting so much data now from all these devices that people interact with, that allows us to create a much better experience for guests, and allows us to sell much more stuff to guests as they're searching and booking and staying at hotels.
Sure. And so with the data that we can get hold of now, there are some companies that are playing the AI card. Do you see that we can leverage AI into the future to deliver the experience that guests are looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the the convergence of the data and then the science that is used to generate the rich personalized experiences to guests is becoming faster reality, right? Some of the biggest companies are working very actively of making sure they understand kind of what guests want and what guests needs and what will convert at the highest level and what kind of offers to put in front of guests, the right type of guests at the right time. So we're definitely seeing an adoption of machine learning, artificial intelligence. We call it revenue science, from some of the largest companies, and that's accelerated over the last 12 months to be able to use automation, use technology, use machine learning to provide a much more dynamic and personalized range of offers to the customers at the point of shopping. And not just that, not just the point of shopping, but also the upselling and cross-selling and all these other components that go with it.
And do you think the terminology we use, cross-selling, upselling, personalization, do you think at some point we will remove those terms and just talk about the fact that we're delivering what people want? It feels like we're still kind of like putting everything in little boxes to make us feel more comfortable. Why is that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? But when people, especially now, look for experiences after having been stuck or still being stuck in their homes, I think even more so than before, they're looking for something very special, right? And price actually has become less of a driving factor over the last, I would say, 6 months since people have been starting to be able to get out again. Then having the right experience and having just what they need at that point in time. And we've seen some research that actually proves that price is actually not the overriding factor right now. It's providing the right type of experience, the right type of environment, the right type of products in the location that people are looking for. And I think people are just saying, you know what, I've been stuck inside. It doesn't matter really what it costs. I want this. I want to get out. I want to have this. I want to have this amazing experience. Doesn't matter really what it costs, up to a limit, obviously.
Yeah, let's hope that, I guess, that the revenue management community are able to manage and sustain as much as they can with integrity. I think there's an element of that. Yeah. There's a fine balance between what you want to try and get for the opportunity versus the future. So I think what
you're seeing, one data point, the when you look at the earnings transcripts or earnings calls over the last couple of weeks from the big brands, many of them have said that ADR is not the problem. It is the occupancy, right? But they're able, because of the leisure demand and because of that lesser degree of price sensitivity, ADRs, they're able to drive ADR quite substantially. It's obviously the occupancy then that needs to follow with other segments than leisure, but people are spending.
Yeah. So one of the comments I made sort of earlier, just to ask you about it regarding this sort of upselling and personalized pricing or attribute-based selling. For me, these terms reflect an industry that's focused on a broadcast delivery of product to customers rather than the other way around, which is what do you need and how can I service that need? So my next question is really this concept of hyper-personalization, which a lot of people are talking about. Do you think we have the technology and also the strategies to deliver hyper-personalization in a way that the guest can recognize?
Well, there's another term we don't want to box ourselves in, right?
Okay, you got me.
Let's go back to how do we give people what they want when they want it, right? I think people are being educated that it becomes an expectation to have that kind of experience no matter who they're interacting with, right? And that's just because Uber and Amazon and Deliveroo and Domino's Pizza all have the capability to personalize the experience to a high degree, and the same expectation is true for hotel companies, right? And ultimately, going on a trip and staying somewhere nice is one of the biggest expense items people usually undertake in a year, other than buying a house and a car. I think the expectation is definitely there from the consumers that they want that personalized experience. Are we there yet? No, we're not. But I see a lot of evidence that technology and investments and startups and systems are catching up to be able to get closer and closer to that point where we say, well, we understand you as a guest, we understand what your needs are, we understand your value and your profitability, and based on that, we'll give you a certain product that we feel will best match your need. Is it ever going to be based on that single person? Probably not, but it's always going to be because we know people like you like that. We'll also think you will like that particular offer or product that we can put together on the fly.
So yeah, interesting. So definitely travel, hotels, big ticket items, the biggest ticket items that a consumer is likely to spend at any one time. It brings me on to the concept of loyalty and revenue management, because loyalty in terms of a grocery store is something that we touch and feel every week, but the demands for rewards that are both aspirational and memorable from a hotel point of view are very, very different from that. How are you finding your discussions with your industry peers going when you talk about loyalty today, and how is it being fostered?
Yeah, interesting. I just talked to a good friend of mine, Dave Roberts, who's in the faculty at Cornell and was previously the global head of revenue management at Marriott. And he told me that he's been researching the area of loyalty quite intensely over the last few months. And he found that on average, people have 17 loyalty programs, at least in the US, and they only use one or two. Because you just sign up whenever you get asked to, if you want to sign up. I think that the current concept of loyalty is not working. I think this whole points-driven approach is just a commoditization of loyalty. And when you peel it back, when you think what is really loyalty, well, loyalty is, when I talk to people, they say, well, I have been going back to this place for 30 years and I go back every year. That is loyalty. And why do they go back every year? Because they get to know the owner, they get to know the people that live in the community, they get to have experiences that matches their needs, they get to understand kind of how they get to feel part of the family almost, right? So loyalty comes from not points that they are earning. That's not why they're going back for 30 years over and over to the same place. It's because of the feelings and the emotions and the experiences that they have while they're in that place, right? So I think, and in my conversation yesterday with Dave, we agreed that loyalty is probably going to undergo a significant and radical change over the next few years, partly also driven through new technologies where there's some conversations about tokenization of your identity, where you can own your identity and you can allow companies to access different parts of your data, and then they can create offers particular to your data that you own and that you want to share with others. So the loyalty will become more personalized, but I think it'll be looking very different than just getting a bunch of points whenever you stay somewhere. Because that's not loyalty.
No, it's not. I think it's interesting as well, to your point about how loyalty technology is changing. And if you look at some of the companies, like the market capitalization of companies that are loyalty companies is hugely higher than those that are travel companies, and yet travel companies try and inspire loyalty. So I think it's going to be interesting the way it goes, and whether or not as travel providers we are responsible for the value of that loyalty in the end. That was an interesting thing for me as well. But coming back to sort of what we need from a revenue management perspective is, in our toolkit, how do we measure and integrate that into a revenue strategy, given the environment we're in at the moment, for example?
Yeah, I think obviously there is it's a very different environment than normal, and maybe this is now the new normal, right? Who knows? But I think there's a couple factors, right? People want to spend money, people want to get out, people want to have different experiences over the last over the last 18 months, and I think this is a great opportunity for hotels and revenue managers to create some new connections with guests and create some higher degrees and higher levels of loyalty by just offering better value, making sure that you have the right balance between price and value, and also offering something above what customers expect. Because ultimately loyalty comes from getting better experiences than you're expecting, and that's the reason why you're going to come back, right? If you go somewhere and you get something different or better, ideally, than what you initially expected, then you'll say, well, this is a great place. I'm going to come back next year or next time because it was just such an amazing experience. So from a revenue management experience, yes, price sensitivity is much lower. Yes, we know that people are willing to spend money, and they have money in many cases. And yes, people are desperate to get out, but let's make sure that we balance that with the right long-term vision and the right long-term perspective. So we factor in the longer-term value and the long-term perspective as well. And interestingly enough, some of the companies that we've been working with, we've been doing quite a lot of work on long-time value and the value of a customer over their lifetime, and not just from a revenue, but also from a profitability perspective.
Yeah.
And making sure that is factored in, not just from a rooms revenue perspective, but from a total spend. So what is a customer spending over the total lifetime? How do we predict that? And then how do we factor in margins and profitability? And how do we get to a point where we have where we can understand the profitability of a customer and predict that, and then make decisions based on that, rather than just a single reservation or a single transaction. Okay,
so putting a price on customer lifetime value, there's always been a bit of a challenge, I think, from a typical revenue manager's point of view. But if what you're saying is you're able to take that data into consideration, how do you think a revenue manager can actually communicate that to the rest of the team? I mean, what kind of data does it kick out? Does it kick out like unnaturally reduced rates for somebody who's really loyal, or how does that work?
It should be, right? I mean, that's the goal, right? The goal is that you have Ally and you have Klaus, and both making booking at the same time, and the system, because it gets data from the CRM and it gets data from other places, understands that Ally is much more valuable than Klaus, because Klaus is very cheap and he doesn't spend any money in the hotel, but Ally obviously goes to the bar and goes to the beach and has all the other takes advantage of all the services in the hotel. So you would get a better rate than I would, because of all the other spend and the associated profitability with that. And that's already possible, or it's going to be possible very soon. Obviously, it relies on the technology components to be able to feed data into the revenue management system and then send data to other places as well, like the rate systems or pricing systems or property management systems, wherever your pricing decisions sit. But the concept of profit optimization versus revenue optimization is definitely evolving very, very fast.
Yeah. And rightly so, I think, particularly in the market as it is now, but moving forward as well. So that sort of brings me on to my last question, which is really, and you sort of touched on it a bit, but cost of acquisition, distribution, customer loyalty. Yeah. Do you see anything in the distribution arena that revenue managers should be aware of and take into consideration?
Yeah, I think, speaking along the same terms as I've mentioned before, we will, there's also opportunity to obviously manage channels much more proactively, right? And factor in the cost of distribution by channel into your overall decision making. So when you're thinking about Klaus and Ally making a booking and you already get a better rate, well, if you go through a certain channel that's less costly for a hotel, you should even get a better rate then, right? Because some of that cost saving should be passed back to you. So the message here that the ability to direct pricing, or to create pricing based on profitability, long-term value, what channel you're coming through, how loyal you are, it's all becoming a reality. And we've talked about that for a long time, but now with the connections that companies are able to make between each other, like an RMS with a CRM and an RMS with outbound systems, and understanding loyalty and understanding value and understanding cost of distribution can all be factored in the final price. And that makes the whole pricing, the generation of the pricing, much more dynamic, which means you can only do it automated, because it's impossible to do that in any way and shape manually on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, agreed. Thank you for that. So we're kind of run out of time, but thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I know. So very, very much appreciate your time today, Klaus. So Klaus, just to say that I is representing IDeaS, who are our Platinum Plus sponsors for the Leadership from Chaos conference in London, Rimini and Stockholm, October the 12th. So Klaus won't be there in person, unfortunately, at the moment, which is a shame, but you'll be joining us during the day in London, which is lovely. So we'll miss you, but thank you very much for today. Thank you.
I'll be there in thought, and I'll be there on the screen as well.
You will.
Thank you very much.